Okay, there we are. Welcome to another live broadcast. So glad that you guys could join us. Today is April the 26th, 2026. 2626. I just realized that. Anyway, I hope you guys having a wonderful weekend. We're coming to the close of a weekend and heading on to another week. And so today we're going to get into this topic. We're going to address a couple of commenters that, that did not necessarily agree with one of the posts I did more recently on our community page, me making a comparison between NFL contracts and slavery. How dare I even make that comparison? How dare I even do that? Well, today I'm going to actually go through it piece by piece. I mean, in the most simplest terms possible, it's economic slavery does exist, and it's not just NFL players. It's a lot of people in this world. But we're going to talk about it, and we're going to make it very plain and easy. And if we have time at the end, if these individuals, if they would like to, make sure you let me know in the chat if you would like to participate by calling in, and we can hear you in your own voice, making your argument, whatever it is. You'll be more than welcome to do that, but you have to let me know in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to forget, so I'm just letting you know. So, but anyway, as we're getting started here, let me play this song here because, my son and I, I write stuff, and my son, he writes too. I don't know if he wrote this song or not, but I was going through some stuff and I was like, did he write this? I don't know. You guys tell me what you think of it.
Chocolate girl. Chocolate girl. Chocolate girl. Yeah. She melts in the sun. Sweet on my tongue. Every step she takes, a rhythm begun. Yeah. She's cocoa, she's velvet, she's all I need. A sugar rush, walking, a living dream indeed. Her laughter smooth, like caramel streams. She's the spark, she's the cream in my dreams. Smile like a candy shop glow. Every word she speaks, it's a sugar flow. Her eyes, they shine like a cocoa night. She's the flavor I crave, she's my delight. She's the taste I can't ignore. One bite leaves me wanting more. Bittersweet and oh, so divine. Chocolate girl.
Hey! Did he write that? I gotta find out. I don't know. I literally just came across it today. I don't know. I gotta find out. Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay. Well, we know, who was actually singing that was AI. And, but I'm very curious. I am extremely intrigued on that one. Oh. Okay. I'm gonna have to find out from him. I'm gonna have to find out. I literally was like going through, some stuff, and I was like, oh, did I do this one? I don't remember doing this one. And I hit play. I was like, oh, snap. Okay. But I do know he has something to do with it because Teddy Riley, even though he was born after those days, that was more of my time. But, that's his dude, the style back then, New Jack Swing, all of that. And then he does stuff with music on his own. I mean, he got a whole setup in his room and all of that, and he's constantly doing stuff. But I came across that. I was like, yeah, I'm going to have to figure that. I'm going to have to find out from him on that one. But anyway, well, I hope you guys are doing great. Today was a beautiful day out here in sunny Arizona. It was, I think we were hovered around in high 70s. And it was just like a light breeze the whole day. The sky was clear. It was almost crystal blue skies, almost there, but it was good enough. We didn't see any chemtrails or anything like that. It was a wonderful day. I mean, a day, when you live somewhere like Arizona, you want to count days like this and you just treasure these days because it was just such a beautiful day. I mean, you could, as far as you could see, you saw the mountains and all of that, and just the beautiful desert landscape. And it was just all in all, just a wonderful day. I mean, if you could, even afterwards, I mean, I love living out here in the West because I love being able to sit outside. I mean, you could do that anywhere, but it's not as many bugs as you would get a lot. We do have insects and all that. We do have flying insects and all that. Don't get it twisted, but not as bad as you would get like if you lived in a more wooded area, like on the East Coast or whatever, where I'm from. But I love being able to sit out at night and not have to necessarily worry about getting my butt tore up, by mosquitoes and all of that. I do like that, but like I said, I know somebody's gonna come in. Oh, well, you never lived in this part of the state. I know there are times and seasons where stuff does come, but as someone who grew up in the Northeast and has family all in the South and lived in the South and lived in South Florida, I know all about mosquitoes and stuff too. So I get that, but out here, it's different. So I love it. And I'll be out there probably this evening once I catch up on some rest and all of that and go on that. Anyway, well, today, like I said, again, it was a good day. Hope you guys got out, got your sunlight, got doing your breathing exercises. Remember, make sure you're doing all of that. Okay. Very, very important. And make sure you head on over to sambatree.com. I'm not going to go through the whole usual thing I do, taking you to the website. Just know that not only do we talk about these very important issues that impact, what we call the Black community, but we also provide some real solutions. And one of the ways that we address it is one of the many ways we address it is through health and wellness. And we have a whole YouTube page. We got a whole page about that. Again, it's sambatree.com. And we talk all about that. So make sure you check that out. Nicole, she's got some new videos coming up real soon. So if you're not subscribed to that YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe to that. What was I going to say? Nicole doing that. It was something else I was going to tell you. We also, because I'm going to be mentioning a book today. Make sure if you have not subscribed, make sure you you're going to have to go through on maybe after this video. I will repost it yet again. We do have a digital library that has about 800 books that are all PDF format that you could download The cost is $9.99. That's it. It's not a monthly thing or anything like that. But $9.99. It'll give you access to all of those books. You can download it. It's research materials, all kinds of stuff, and I put it all in there under that folder that I have out there. So if you're interested in that, if anything, just leave a comment and then I'll make sure I get you the information. Okay. It's very easy. It only takes seconds to get it and that's it. So anyway, just wanted to mention that as well. All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. So today, earlier today, I noticed, I was looking at some of the comments under some of the videos that we, put out or content that we put out. And I came across a couple of comments of individuals who really didn't like, my characterization of comparing, people who get these sports contracts, with slaves, and they really had a difficult time with that. And so we conversated the best way we could or whatever, but, they repeatedly said I didn't know what I was talking about. How dare you compare, slavery to people who are getting millions of dollars. You just sound silly, all this stuff. Right. And so I let them talk and all of that. And then I also said, hey, listen, I would like to talk about this and, go through this again. I've talked about this in great detail many times in the past, but I'm willing to do it again. But yeah, I'll do a video. Let's do a video and I'll just go through it so you completely understand where I'm coming from on this. But it's not just me saying this. That's the point. They're trying to, these individuals acting as if I just came up with this myself. No, there's many people who have been saying this and making the comparisons. And quite honestly, I think the comparisons are fair. Once you understand what slavery is and, all of that stuff, you begin to quickly understand that. I'm trying to bring it up right now on the screen. Just give me just a moment here. Let's see. Oh, I see why it's not doing that. Is it this one? There it is. Okay, here we go. So this is the post here that they were talking about. This one here, where you see, the guys, ChatGPT wouldn't even generate that. It was saying that it's violating its protocols or something like that. And I just said, okay, well, generate it in a way that it doesn't violate your protocols, but yet you are maintaining exactly what I'm asking. And I guess it hit an impasse and it went and generated it anyway. And so anyway, you see, you got the guy who's been selected by the auctioneer. And, this is during slave retirement. And you see in the bottom left-hand corner, the mother saying, my baby got picked. But she's sad about it. Fast forward to today, same situation. Now they're wearing suits. And then you got Roger Goodell looking guy behind the pulpit there. And then now you got the mother. This time she's saying, my baby got picked, but she's excited about it. And yeah, there were people who, and so there it is. That's exactly, in a nutshell, that's what's happening today. I mean, when you listen, you have mothers out there now who, how you have like the wives or the girlfriends of, athletes, they have like their own little group. Well, now you got the mothers, they have like their own group now, it's like a whole thing now. And so, but yeah, it's something that we should, that people say we should generally be excited about. These young men and women too, they, they're given an opportunity now to showcase their skill set on the world stage, on all over the world. People will now be able to appreciate these athletes and what they're able to do on the court. I emphasize on the court. Okay. I emphasize that. I didn't say the skill set in the owner's box. I didn't say that. Okay. On the court. All right. And so that is exactly where we're going to go. So, but let me pull up, if I can, the comments of these individuals here. And let me be clear, I'm never offended, okay? I'm not, any pushback we get on anything we do, I'm always willing to listen. You know what I mean? And but what I don't like is if I'm listening to you and when I respond, you're not even bothering to read or listen to anything I say. Well, I got problems with that. You know what I mean? And the conversation is not really going to go too far after that. But anyway, let's pull this up here. And am I looking at the right thing? No, I'm not. Actually, hold on. Pulled up the wrong thing here. Okay, here we go. Here it is. Okay. All right, so here we go. So here's the first one here. Someone said, it's really stupid and an insult to ancestors to compare their lifetime bondage, suffering, torture, rape, etc. to instant multimillionaires due to the draft. Pure idiocy. All right. And I just simply said $40 million slaves, and I gave him the author, William C. Roden, read it. That's all I said. Says, I agree. It's not remotely the same thing. And this is someone else. By that logic, everyone in America is a slave because we all have a social security number that is controlled through stock exchange. Not a rational comparison, in my opinion. It's you're going to see this. It's like a recurring thing. It's like people respond to things based on what the conversation that they're having in their head. Who's talking about a social security number? I mean, what kind of analogy is that? Nobody's even mentioning that. No, this what you're saying, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. All right. And so anyway, someone else, they left a comment too. Let me see. Oh, here's the other one here. It says, oh, y'all stupid. Imagine making slavery your identity. Those poor kids are about to get $100 million contracts thrown their way. And I say real generational wealth doesn't come all under a contract where the largest benefactor is the one creating the contract in the first place. It's still slavery. And then they go on and they say, based off of your logic, here we go again. Your job is slavery. Every contract that binds you to something is slavery. Hell, even you going to college and signing a contract, then getting approved is slavery. Like you can try to sound all educated and say that an NFL contract doesn't provide generational wealth. But anyone who has passed the third grade would know that that's BS. It's plenty of athletes who have not worked or had to struggle. Let's go on there. Struggle anymore just based off of those contracts. Wow. First of all, they don't have to struggle anymore. Athletes don't have to struggle anymore. Okay, we're going to get into that. Yeah, once they get the contract, you just sit back and chill and relax. Yep, that's how it works. Based off of those contracts. Like, what is your point, brother? How do you suggest black people build generational wealth without being an athlete or working and being in the entertainment business? That's our only choices? By starting a business? Check this out. Wow. This is what we're dealing with, y'all. This is what we're dealing with. This guy actually said this out of his typewriter off his keyboard. How do you suggest black people build generational wealth without being an athlete or working and being in the entertainment business? By starting a business? Laughing my ass off. I'm pretty sure even you know it takes money to make money. Y'all have to chill out with this nonsense. Slavery was non-voluntary forced labor with no pay or benefits. How does one compare that to an NBA or NFL contract? If you wanted to, you can just not show up and just leave. The only consequences I'm just reading it as it's written here, will not get paid. They will go to jail if they don't play or be killed by ideology is insane. Stop spewing ridiculous narratives. All right, and then I'll just read this last one here. You could read my responses or whatever, but I'm just sticking to this guy here. Look, you could try to make it seem as if you're the only person who understands wealth and building wealth. But newsflash, brother, you're not. So you saying that gaining wealth doesn't help you build it respectfully makes you sound ignorant and stupid. I'm trying to understand the sentence here. Anyway, and stupid. Let's just be clear. Did white people not have redlining plus help by the government and wealth given? Dude, you going all over the place. Who's talking about all of that? Do you not understand how ridiculous that sounds? Anyway, he goes on. You're speaking as if all these black people didn't just get a college education, and many of them, not all, have some form of financial literacy. So if your point is that building wealth is better than receiving it, it takes time to understand that they ain't just wake up to a contract in the face. I'm sorry, I can't continue to read it. It's all over the place. I'm trying, y'all. It's literally all over the place. And I'm not trying to be rude or anything like that. That is dizzying to me. All right. So anyway, so what I'm gonna do is this. To start off this conversation here, let's do this. Give me just a moment. For some reason, I want to make sure if anybody's commenting, I could see. Okay, all right, cool. All right, let me get to something here. Just give me just a moment here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is we're just gonna start off very simple. All right, so when we talk about when we talk about wealth versus having money, let's just start off with that. Okay, let's start off with that. If you're earning an income right now, what you're doing is that you are trading your time, your energy, your skills for a paycheck. All right. If you stop working, the money stops, period. Okay. So in our example, we're talking about athletes here. All right. And so when they stop playing, I don't care how much money they got. If they stop playing for whatever the reason, they stop making money. It's just as simple as that. They stop making money. All right. Now, on the other hand, someone who's wealthy, they can show up one day for work, miss a month, come back the following month. They just decided to just do a whole, I decided just to go visit the islands for a month. And I just was randomly just picking islands all over the world. Well, they can do that. Why? Because their money is working for them. Okay? They have millions and millions and millions of dollars that are tucked away in investments and properties or whatever it is. Their money is always working for them. So someone who is wealthy, they don't work a 9 to 5, so to speak. You understand what I'm saying? However, if you are someone that has a lot of money, let's say someone gives you money, that's a start. That's a start. But if you don't have basic financial literacy in how to invest these things, which unfortunately many of these athletes do not have that, then yes, it does turn very quickly into economic slavery. I'm going to show you some videos in a moment here. All right. I'm going to play a couple of videos of athletes who are basically underscoring exactly what I'm saying here, as far as, what happened and how they are treated. These are multi-million-dollar folks who sign multi-million-dollar contracts. But I want you to hear from them firsthand how they're treated. Okay. So just give me a moment here. Give me a moment here. Let me reach for my phone here. Hold on. Give me just a moment here, and I'll bring it up right on the screen so you can see we could listen to it. I wish I had a wait. Let me hold on for a second here. Where do I begin with this? All right, let's see. I will play. Okay, I'll play this. I'll start off with this one here. This is a good one because I got several of them I want you to see here. As always, thank you guys for your patience. Really appreciate that. All right, let's see. All right, here we go. Here we go. This thing will not send to my computer like it used to. All right, let's see. Let's see, 820. Okay, all right, it's coming. This thing, I used to be able to just copy and paste it. For some reason, won't do it anymore. All right, let's see. All right, so this is the first one here. It's coming now. This is the first one I want to show you. And this guy, I don't know if he still plays in the NFL, but let's take a look here. There we go. All right.
If y'all think me getting cut 4 hours before my first NFL game was crazy, I got cut again the very next day. 10 minutes before my car got delivered from Dallas. After the game, I'm at an all-time high. I played well. I caught my first NFL pass. I didn't drop any balls. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'm good. I made it. So then my parents call and they're like, hey, just a reminder, your car is already on the way and it should be there, which was perfect because I needed to get out of that rental car anyway. It was costing me too much. And for the first time, I wasn't living out of my suitcase anymore. I was in my apartment, cleaning out my suitcase, putting my shoes on the shoe rack, hanging up my clothes, unpacking, making my apartment feel more like a home now. Then I get a call. Hey, we're about 10 minutes away with your car. Make sure you have your money ready. So I remember grabbing my $1,000 and I went to the window and I'm just looking and waiting and ready because I'm excited because I'm finally getting my car. Then the phone rings again and it's the general manager. And he says, Sky, I'm calling to let you know that we're releasing you today and that we need you to go ahead and come back to the office and return your playbook. And I'm like, wait, what? And he says, Sky, we're releasing you. And I said, okay, why? Like, okay, so you guys you're cutting me. Yes, Sky, we're cutting you. Okay, but you guys, I played in the game. I did everything you guys asked me to do. You guys even started me. I didn't have any errors, and I caught all the passes that you guys threw my way. Why are you guys cutting me? He said, Sky, it's because the numbers. The numbers? What does that even mean? And he says, Sky, we just need you to bring your playbook to the office and I have your plane ticket ready to go back home to Dallas. And I just remember hanging up the phone and just crying. Then my phone rang again and it was a guy with my car. And he says, hey, I'm outside, I'm here. So I remember grabbing my money, I remember grabbing my $1,000, walking outside still in tears. A mix of emotions I was feeling because one part of me was extremely sad. But then the other part was just pissed off, mad. So mad to the point where I could have really just kicked a dent in my car. I am paying this guy $1,000 to ship my car to me. But now I'm gonna need to go ahead and give him another $1,000 just to haul it back. And I remember getting the keys, getting in my car, backing it into my parking space, and I just broke down in tears. I called my parents, and they were highly upset. Then The very next day, I wake up and I see my phone ringing. It's the general manager. I answer and he's like, "Hey, Sky, we decided we're going to go ahead and keep you on the team." What? So now I'm just sitting there like, what is going on?
Okay, let me read this to you again, and then I'm going to show you the next video, okay? Making money at a job is about earning income right now. You trade your time, energy, or skills for a paycheck. If you stop working, the money stops. Building wealth is about owning things that keep paying you over time, even when you're not actively working, all right? So I just wanted to read that to you, because what I'm going to do now is let me bring up the next video, and then I'm going to ask you a very simple question. Very simple question. So you heard his experience, right? Let's take a listen to this gentleman.
As I'm watching these NFL preseason games, I see a lot of guys who are about to, meet reality head on, right? Like a lot of these guys that you're watching in preseason, most of them are going to get cut, and most of them are probably not going to ever play again, right? I was an undrafted free agent to the New Orleans Saints in 2007. I played cornerback, and my first time getting cut was just like, was devastating. It was awful. It was humiliating. So what happened was, this is the day after we played the Chiefs, right? Now, mind you, I didn't get any reps at all, any plays in this game, none, zero. So the fact that I was shocked about this still kind of bewilders me at this point, right? So I get a phone call. It's some intern. He's like, "Sean Payton wants to see you." Now, Sean Payton, the head coach at the time for the Saints, is an offensive-minded head coach, right? He doesn't give too much of a, he doesn't worry too much about the defense side of the ball. So long story short, I don't see him in meetings, something like that. He's never spoken to me. I had signed in April, and it's August. Him and I had never had a conversation. We have never spoken, nothing. So he wants to see me. Right, here we go. So they come pick me up, drive me over there. I walk in the facility, I walk to his office, and he closed the door. He looks at me and he says, "Joe, I just got to get this roster down." And from that point on, my ears, they didn't work anymore. I still see, in my mind, I see him talking to me, but I have no idea what he said, right? I'm devastated. I'm hurt. You know what I mean? I'm humiliated. I'm about to be depressed, and I walk out his office, and they have some guy walking next to me like an intern, and his job is to make sure you don't really that you don't cause a scene, right? Go to my locker. You go to the doctor, get physically cleared. I probably should have made an injury at this point. I have to look back at it. You go to your locker, take all your stuff. You obviously can't take your shoulder pads, stuff like that, but your belongings you take. And they get you out of there. So if you get cut at 9:30 in the morning, you're probably gonna be in a plane at 12:30, right? It happens really, really fast. And flying home, I was hurt, devastated, right? Like I said, this is the first time someone's telling you you're not good enough to to be on our team. It's had never happened to me before. And a lot of guys right now playing the preseason, it's never happened to them before either, right? It's devastating because my identity was in football. That's what I had. That's all I knew, right? If I played well, I had value. If I didn't play well, I had no value. So this is kind of, my upbringing for basically my entire life. And the first time, you don't have this anymore. Playing football in September, not playing football in September, rather, it's a humbling experience. You got to go home and explain to everybody what happened. I remember flying home back to New Jersey, and I was hoping that this plane would crash. I was hurt, devastated. My identity now was in Christ. I have stability, I have worth, I have value outside of my sport. But at the time period, that's all I had. You know what I mean? So, as you're watching these preseason games, those guys about to have a realization, real soon that they have, nothing else besides this. It's going to suck for a lot of guys. So make sure that your identity is rooted in the right things.
All right, there you go. So, and if you do a quick search, you'll find plenty of examples like that of athletes who were given an opportunity, to play, to make millions and millions of dollars, but just like that, they were cut. You saw how very cold and callous it is and how they get cut. I mean, it's just very cold and callous. Well, I'm looking at the numbers here, and the numbers aren't quite adding up. So we're going to put you on a plane, and maybe we'll be interested into you with you, maybe next year. We'll see where we are next year, and we'll talk again. But in the meantime, don't let the door hit your backside. Now, let me ask you something. We're having this conversation about wealth versus just getting a bag, right? Now, someone like a Jeff Bezos is wealthy, right? I mean, I think we can all agree he's wealthy. Why? Because he's got investments literally all over the place. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, all over the place. Could you imagine someone like a Jeff Bezos being canceled simply because he decided that he didn't want to talk to the press? Can you imagine that if Jeff Bezos, he said, you know what, these people in the press, they're really getting on my last nerve. I don't feel like talking. I don't feel like talking. I'm not doing any press conferences. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm tired. I don't feel like doing. Could you imagine Jeff Bezos actually getting canceled and losing out millions and millions of dollars and getting fined simply because he chose not to talk to someone in the press? Could you imagine someone like the guy over Mark Zuckerberg, for example, if he let out an outburst where he just was mad, he was angry, and he just said a curse word or something like that in a moment of great frustration, and he got fined for that, tens of thousands of dollars? Could you imagine someone like a Mark Zuckerberg being fined for something like that? No. And then we can go down the list of the Dells, many other people who have billions and billions of dollars in wealth and assets and things like that. Can you imagine them getting, canceled and being treated like these two gentlemen are just to get on a team? It wouldn't happen. That's the difference between someone that has wealth and someone who's working a 9-to-5. These guys, at the end of the day, unlike these athletes here, with these athletes, they are literally putting their blood, sweat, and tears on the line. And even that is not enough in many cases. These are top tier athletes. Now, when they're given the opportunity, let's say handed over millions of dollars or whatever, ultimately it is up to them. They can use that. Let's say someone like a Michael Jordan, who surrounded himself with people that he could trust to help him to invest in different things and all of that. And that's why Jordan is where he is today. But there are many other people who don't do that. They just take the money, buying everybody cars or whatever, and then by the time, their career is over, an injury here or there, they don't have nothing to show for it. There are many stories like this, just not just NFL, but NBA. And I'm sure in other sports as well, where money in a large amount was given to them. But because they didn't have the instruction, if you will, on how to build on that, there are many cases that, unfortunately, they're not able to build on that at all. But the treatment of these individuals, how they're treated, these are people who have committed their whole lives to what they do, but yet you see what these guys are saying, how they're treated. So therefore, that's why I'm saying $1 million slaves. And I mentioned the book, $40 Million Slaves. I'll just show you the cover. And I believe I have this, you guys, in our in our collection. Trying to find it here. Hold on for a second. I thought let's see, hold on. Where would I put that? Hold on. Oh, here it is. $40 Million Slaves. It's right here. If you don't have this book, make sure you get it here. I'll just going through this chapter here. The Dilemma of Wealth Without Control. and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But let me just show you the cover real quick in case there are people out there who aren't familiar with this book. I'll just show you the cover here, because what the author basically, here it is right here. Here's the cover: $40 million slaves, the rise, fall, and redemption of the black athlete. So if you don't have that book, I know somewhere where you can get it. Anyway, so in the book, basically where he is going with what he's saying here is that, you know, there's been a lot of talk for years about black folks getting into ownership of teams, because once you own something, then yes, you are in a place where you can control the narrative. You understand? So the problem is these athletes aren't in an ownership position. And what's sad is that when I listen a lot of times to people, you know, out here who want to protest and say that these owners need to make room at the table for black people, because after all, it's black people. We're the ones that, you know, most NFL players are black. So we deserve to have a place at the ownership table. No, the hell you don't. No, you don't, because you don't understand business. You understand emotion, but you don't understand business. See, in business, the way it works is if you want that business, there's something called a hostile takeover. That's how you take over businesses. I mean, y'all, come on. I mean, how many lessons does Facebook or Meta have to teach you on how the business world works? How many lessons does Apple have to teach you on how the business works? How many lessons does Amazon have to teach us to let us know how the business world really works? Do you think any of these companies are begging for a spot and a position simply because they're the biggest? No, they take. That's how it works. That's how it works. It doesn't work on emotion. So for all of these athletes, for all these black folks out here who want a place at the table, you already messed up. You already messed up, because you're going in with a mindset, can I just have a little corner of the table? No, I want the table, and all of y'all get out of here. That's exactly how these people think. That's how it works, y'all. But you can't do that if you don't have the money to do that. You understand what I'm saying? So way these businesses work is this. They'll say, okay, that's a company that I want, and I want it now. And what they do is they'll maybe do an invite. Let's do lunch. Let's sit down and let's work this out. I want your business. You know, the owner is up to them. They'll say, okay, well, how much you willing to pay? And of course, you know, I'm just being funny. You know, they have somebody come over with the suitcase and show, you know, they don't do, you know, but you know what I'm saying? They bring the money over. They let them know, show them how many zeros and all that, and say, this is how much I'm willing to pay. And you could just walk away tomorrow and be a rich man for the rest of your life. You know, you got a lot of people that actually just go with that because that's exactly what they wanted, right? But you also got people who will say, no, this is something that we built. This is something that we built, and this is something I'm going to stand on. And no, I don't care. No dollar amount you're going to buy us out, because we're committed to this, that, or whatever. We're committed to our dream, whatever, right? And so if the company, the large company, if they want that business, let's say if it's a publicly traded business, let's just say, then they'll just say, okay, we'll just buy you out. We'll buy out your stocks. We'll buy out all your shares. And then we'll have a controlling interest in your company. And then we'll just do it that way. That's one way. And then there's other manipulations that they do as well. But that's how they work. You don't beg for a position at the table. You understand what I'm saying? And so as long as black folks continue to think that way, you always going to be in that position. But getting back to what I'm saying is that I want you to make sure you remember now. I want you to keep on replaying what those two gentlemen were saying, how they were treated. They're in positions to get millions and millions of dollars, but look how they're being treated. there are many stories of athletes that have been playing for years, and they're being told by someone on the other phone that they hadn't even have meat. Okay, get on the plane, move your family, move your cat and your dog, and meet me in whatever town it is or whatever, because you're going to be starting for this team tomorrow. And they'll do that, sell their house, and move to the next city or whatever it is. And then the next day they get another phone call from someone else saying, well, they thought about it and they're not interested anymore. Goodbye. You imagine them telling someone, again, like a Jeff Bezos or someone like that, you imagine them talking to them like that? But see, the problem is a lot of people, we see the money and we think that somehow that money alone is wealth. It's not. See, someone that's wealthy, what they're going to do is, if something like that was going to happen, they'll be like, okay, well, whatever, no problem. I'll just pivot over here. I'm cool. I kind of like this city anyway. I'll just go ahead and buy 2 houses or whatever. That's the difference. A lot of these athletes, unfortunately, are left high and dry by these teams that just pull them left and right and will get them to do all kinds of crazy things to prove their worth. You heard what he said. This guy literally just said that his whole worth as a human being was tied into the sport. So when you take the time and actually listen to these athletes, that's exactly what they're going to tell you. Everything about them, their value as a human being, is tied into a sport. And the owners know that. Notice what I said, owners. Gee, I wonder where that term came from. Owners, that sounds like a plantation to me. The owners know that. And now it's getting even worse, because now you have the NIL stuff. Now let's talk about that. Now, on the surface, it sounds good. On the surface, it actually sounds good. Sorry, hold on. Let me get back to here. On the surface, it actually sounds good that these young men, now even in high school, they're getting money. You know what I mean? They're getting money or whatever. On the surface, that's not, you put in the time, you put in the work or whatever. Okay, fine. They're getting a little money and all of that and and stuff. On the surface, that's fine. I don't, same thing with colleges, especially college athletes. They should have been getting paid a long time ago. I don't have an issue with that at all. But here's the thing. Let me scroll back a little bit. When my children, when they were in high school and they were playing sports, I recall how I could see the changes were starting to happen at that time, where parents really, you always have like the sports parents that are always very serious about their kids playing sports and all of that, right? But I started seeing how parents were literally holding their kids back, for a year, 2 years, 3 years or whatever, so that they can get optimum shine on the field. And these are black parents. I saw this happening in Atlanta, but I'm sure, you got white parents or whatever do it too, so it ain't really a color thing. I'm just telling you what I saw as someone who was living in Atlanta. I had a front row seat to this, where these kids were actually being held back for years just so that they can get shine on the field or on the court. But when it came to their academics, they had no idea what they were doing. They were barely passing, or the school themselves was in on it to make sure that part gets concealed. The school, as long as they said, no, we're going to do whatever we got to do to make sure that these athletes get the most shine, because when they shine, the school shines. Those seats get filled. You get more people who want to come to the school, which means we get more tax dollars and all that stuff. So everybody been making money off of these individuals. It's just like slavery. Same thing. See, let me stop you for a second. See, a lot of times when people think of slavery, and I just want to scroll back here and I'm going to continue where I was going. Slavery isn't just whips and chains and people getting raped and all of that. That is not just the only version of slavery. There's also economic slavery. There's economic slavery as well. if you ultimately are not in control of your own economic destiny, where you're still, people say, well, we all got to answer to somebody. There's some people who don't live like that. To that degree, you're you're in slavery. You are. See, and I was listening to the gentleman I was talking about earlier, the one that was in the comments, and I think he's in there now. And like I said earlier, if you're just getting in, I really hope that you heard this conversation from the beginning, because like I said, again, I am more than willing to open up the phone line if you want to chat. I'm very willing to do that. But you got to make sure you hearing me out first in everything I'm saying. And we got to keep it respectful too. So if you're willing to do that, make sure you put that in the chat. I'll go through it when I'm finished here. If you're more than, you want to chat, I'm here. You know what I mean? We'll keep it respectful the whole nine. So anyway, so what's happening now is that now parents are they're training their children. I'm talking about parents who have these star athletes to be athletes, to be just that, where they're prioritizing their athleticism. But when it comes to their education level, that's a secondary. Well, if they're barely learning how to read, knowing how to read and do mathematics and some of the basics in high school, how do you think they're going to be able to handle themselves when it comes to millions of dollars in finances and being able to manage that? Now, as I said earlier, you do have exceptions out there of individuals, athletes, who were able to partner or to get with people who can help them in understanding that part of the business. But the majority are not like that. That is not the case for a majority of them. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's what I really fear what we're walking into now, is that some of our best and brightest when it comes to athleticism, if they're not even learning how the basics of just reading, mathematics, just that in and of itself, they're going to get stomped all over there once the money comes. It's just what it is. This is the facts. It happens a lot, a whole lot. And so that is what we're talking about here when it comes to wealth. Is it a pathway? If someone gets a contract and it's worth millions of dollars for them to generate generational wealth? Yes, it is. There's no argument there. But is it automatically equate to wealth, generational wealth? Absolutely not. I mean, we can even look at the lottery. How many lottery winners do we have out there that won millions of dollars and then in a few short years, it's gone? They broke. It doesn't come automatic. And what I'm saying is, when you look at the numbers, unfortunately, many of these athletes, they do not move into a place of generational wealth. And then when you look at how they're even treated by these owners, as long as black faces are not owning teams, and when I say black faces, let me kind of be very specific on that, because just because you have black faces in high places, it doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. So that's a whole nother conversation we need to have on that. Okay. But as long as you don't have as long as we don't have black faces who have a real care and love for other black people who are actually owning teams, to that degree, you are an economic slave. You are. And this goes all the way back to a video I did a while back. It was a video I did a long time ago where I talked about going back. If you look at the image I did, I kind of put some hints there, who was in control, who had a significant controlling interest in the transatlantic slave trade, and it was the Jews. And then you fast forward to today, you'll see, unfortunately, in the sports where you have a large percentage of black Americans participating in it, you will find right next to who are the owners of that are Jews. Majority, okay, you look at the majority ownership in the NFL, they're Jewish. You look at the majority ownership in the NBA, they're Jewish. Then once you start going to those other sports, they start tapering off. I find that to be very interesting, but not a coincidence as well. It's just a continuation of what they've been doing. You understand what I'm saying? But I want to make it very clear what this whole thing about slavery. Slavery isn't just whips and chains. See, the thing is that you got some people who sat and watched the whole trilogy of The Matrix and came out with just talking about how good the special effects were. The Matrix, like they said, was just a whole documentary. It was about addressing this issue of how we as people in this system, we are slaves. We may have nicer living arrangements. We may be given a sense of freedom, but at the end of the day, economically, we're still slaves. You think people out here who are doing the gig economy stuff, you think they're building wealth? No. They're not building wealth. They're surviving. That's called surviving. Now, what's an example of someone building wealth? Well, building wealth is investing in you, building your brand, building your business. Now, to the gentleman's point that left a comment earlier, who kind of scoffed at the idea of, building, can black people build wealth by building their own businesses? There's actually some truth to that. In this system, I would say absolutely not. You can't. But does that mean that the only options we have is to be in athletics and be in entertainment? Hell no. You're a fool to think that. So our only option is to be entertainers. In this system, to a degree, yes. But do we have to accept that? No. You know what I mean? Black people that I know, and it's not just black people, but it's other people, but let's just stick to black people for a moment. You got more and more black folks who are now really considering moving out of this country. And the reason why they're looking in that direction, and I'm waving my hand because yours truly, we're definitely looking in that direction for real and been looking in that direction for a very long time. Because we're done with the struggle. We're done with it. We're done with the struggle. We shouldn't have to struggle. And the thing is that it's not about, I want a big house and I want car. I don't want any of that. I mean, you want to live in a nice home, but, I don't want nothing like palatial and all that. I don't need all of that. I want to be able to live in a place where I can get good quality food, clean air, clean water. As far as like, oh, Lord, how we going to pay this gas bill? Lord, how we going to pay this power bill? Lord, how we got to do that? We shouldn't have to live like that. Where you just, everything you need is already there. You wake up, you ain't got, that's a form of wealth. And you just continue to contribute to that kind of lifestyle where you don't have to, you have all the basic things you need. You understand what I'm saying? So when we talk about wealth versus having a lot of money, you got to understand these are vast concepts here. But I think a lot of times particularly when I'm listening to some black folks, or even particularly our younger black folks, a lot of times they just automatically assume that just because you get a bag of money, now all of a sudden, everybody gonna be taken care of forever. No, that's not how it works. You have to have there's a lot that comes with that. Now let me switch and talk about this very quickly, because on the thumbnail, I mentioned this regarding reparations. Let me just mention this really quickly, because I've talked about reparations a lot on this platform, but I'll do my utmost and best to summarize it very quickly, okay, on my thoughts on reparations, because I think this right here will bring it home. Okay, so if there's any confusion, this will bring it home. Okay, now, when it comes to reparations, is there a legitimate argument for reparations? In other words, when it comes to people who were brought over to this country, and I don't please, we're not going to get into the whole, we didn't come from Africa nonsense. If you're going to trip and get triggered off of that, then get on out of here. I don't care about that. Okay. But for now, we're going to go this way. Okay. When black folks were brought over on to this place from Africa, all right, enslaved. We didn't come here because we wanted to. We didn't have a choice. Stripped of everything we had. Everybody knows all of that, right? And we were forced to work. We were forced to build this country, to build the economic foundation of this country. Okay, you with me? All right. And so we did all of that. We were promised 40 acres and a mule. We were promised all this other stuff. Well, of course, we never got any of that. Now, you have people on the conservative side will say, well, they gave us Jesus, and they also gave us the opportunity not to live in mud huts and all of that. They'll spend that kind of nonsense. But I ain't talking about that. But the bottom line, they ain't give us, when you look at these other groups, they were given money. They were given resources. They were given assets, right? Black folks were not given that. So if you're going to just base the reparations argument on just that, what I just said, absolutely right. I have no disagreement with that. I have no disagreement on the concept and understanding of reparations, and why is it based off of that, black folks should also be entitled to receive reparations in the same form and fashion that the Jews have received it, the same form and fashion that the Japanese received it, and any other groups that have who've been on the receiving end of that. Black folks should be no different. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. Now, you have to get deeper in this conversation to really understand what reparations really mean. Okay? Now, because what I'm about to share with some of y'all, you may not have heard this before, but those that hear my regulars, you've already heard me explain this many times, but I'm doing this for the benefit of those who may not have heard this. Okay, so now here you are. Today, we are knocking on the door. No, we're banging on the door of the United States government, and we're making this argument, a very legitimate argument. And we're saying that, Mr. Government, you owe us money. You owe us reparations. You owe us some cash. You owe us our bag. Because by giving us that money, what that's going to do is going to transform us, and it's going to create opportunities for us to be whatever, right? But here's the thing. Once again, you're still thinking like a slave. I'm going to take my time with this, okay? Because some of y'all are ready to jump off just on that. How am I saying it? How am I coming to that conclusion? I'm coming to that conclusion by this, because what you're doing is that you are you are demanding the very system that enslaved your ancestors. You are demanding them to once again to assign you and your ancestors a value. Because in order for the government to give you reparations, there has to be an agreement between you and the government. You can't the government ain't going to just hand out. Y'all going to have to agree at the table. There has to be an agreement. And when you're dealing with an agreement, especially when you're dealing with money, there is compromise on both sides. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand business, which means you don't understand wealth, which means you're in the wrong conversation. So there's going to be a compromise that has to take place. So we're asking the government to assign us a value. That's what we're doing. That's number one. Number two, what is the government going to give? What are you asking the government to give you? You are asking, and this is for the reparations people, you are demanding that the government hands you over cash. And again, on the surface, I don't have a problem with that. But who controls the cash? You don't. You don't control the cash. Who controls the cash? The very people that you're demanding to assign a value to you. And what do I mean when I say assigning value? What do I mean by that? So if they're assigning value to you, they are also in a position to assign value to the paper money that you're telling them to give you. They manipulate the markets all the time. They can say today, all right, the cash value is going to be this. And then tomorrow, once they give it to all the black folks, they'll say, okay, you know what? Forget the dollar. We're done with the dollar. We're going to go we're going to go to digital now. You don't think that they're not already setting up the economy for that? We've been talking about this. They've been talking about this. So you want them to give you a value, right? You want them to give you a value. You want them to give you a monetary reward or whatever you want to call it on something that they have established the value on it. You didn't, they did. So today they can tell you this paper is worth $100,000. They put it in your black hands. Tomorrow they can say it's worth nothing. Then now what? They control that. Okay, I got to take my time with this because some people are very slow on these things. And that's not an insult, I'm just telling you. Okay, so let's continue. So they give you that. Okay, so now let's fast forward to today. As I told you, the system, these people have been talking about the transition that they are trying to make now over to digital money. And we've already been doing that now with credit cards and debit cards. But the transition that they're making over to digital money. Now, what is that? Why should that be the optimum conversation piece for anybody that is talking about reparations? Why should that be? Please listen to what I'm saying. Please listen. Because with digital money, the digital money that they're talking about, all we got to do is look at China. What they're doing is this. They'll say, okay, Dwayne, I'm going to give you 500 credits, whatever that means, right? But we're going to assign some stipulations on how and where you can spend that money. Wait a minute now. Hold on. I thought this was economic freedom. I thought once we get a bag, we're building wealth. I thought that's what it was. No, you can't build wealth in the system like that. How can you build wealth in a system like that where they're giving you the money, the credits, or whatever you want to call it, but they're still in a position to tell you how and where you can spend it? So let's say tomorrow we wake up, Trump in his crazy mind says, I'm going to give all the niggas, I'm going to give them all $1 billion in digital money. Let's just say. So he gives you $1 billion in digital money. So you get that. That's your reparations money. And then once you get it, then you getting ready to say, okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to get together and we're going to start buying some land and we're going to start doing this and we're going to start buying some factories and we're going to start doing this. And the government, all they got to do is press a button and be like, no, you ain't doing nothing. What you're going to do is you'll be able to do this and this and this, but you ain't doing that. You're not taking, you thought the digital money that we created on our servers, you actually thought that you was going to buy us out? You thought that? Who put that in your mind? This is what I'm trying to tell. I've been saying this same message for years and people still get angry and want to say, you're a coon because you don't want reparations. No, fool, you just don't want to listen. Your whole economic forecast or whatever your plan is when they give us our money, they already put a value on it just like they put a value on you. That's how the system works. This system is not designed for certain people to build wealth. It's just not. It is not designed for that. I will wholeheartedly agree with that. This system, like the gentleman said in the comments, it is very difficult. It narrows the scope on how, particularly black folks, how we can generate generational wealth in this system. It's very narrow. But does that mean, let's say someone's 40 and they're 50-year-old, you can still build generational wealth on that. You're just in the wrong system. You got to find a place where you can build things, where you do have opportunities where you can build things and you can network with other people and you can build different structures and all that kind of stuff. And this world is bigger than America. This world is bigger than America. You know, I listen to people who have made the decision, and you do your choice. And this is not something I'm preaching and telling other people to do, but I've listened to a great number of people who have made the choice and the decision to move out of this country and go to another country and to build their business or to live their life. The first thing they say is, man, I just don't even feel the weight of the struggle anymore. It's just not even there. I just never would imagine being able to live a life where I don't have to struggle like I used to. See, the majority of us don't even know that feeling, because all we've been told is this is all you are supposed to do. You're supposed to go to college, you're supposed to get a job, and then you're supposed to work hard on that until you die. Well, we see what's happening now with a lot of these college educated people. They're losing jobs left and right. People making six figures, now all of a sudden they're delivering food. Or they're living in their cars. I saw a video pop up the other day where they said there's a trend or whatever now where you got college educated people now that are living in their cars now because they can't afford rent. How can you build generational wealth in a system where this is becoming more and more the thing now? You can't. See, what I'm trying to do is get you to think a little bit bigger and wider than these very small concepts of you got to be in athletics, or you got to be in entertainment or whatever to do that. No, you don't. There are many ways you can do it. Let me bring it home. For Samba Tree, for me, I can't. The things I've shared in the past, the things that's going on behind the scenes, that's just some of the stuff. And I'm not saying, and those things that I shared, those things weren't too good things, but there's a lot of positive things too that we're doing and planning and all that kind of stuff here. We ain't sharing all of that. But if we continue on the trajectory that we're going on right now, this is something that could be generational if we do it right. Generational in a good way. But I've come to the conclusion that I'm not going to be able to do it here. It's not going to, for what I have inside of me, it's not going to happen here. Now, there's some black folks, there's some black families out here who have been able to build generational wealth and all of that stuff, you know, and have been able to do it and quite successfully. But as we've talked about on this platform, many of them are part of the boule. They're part of these fraternities and sororities and things like that. And that's typically the route that you have to go in order for that to happen. Well, I don't want to do any of that. I want to be able to build my business or businesses without a bank being involved. I don't want a bank loan. I don't want to, I'm done with the bank loans. I don't want that. Living on credit cards and stuff like that, I'm absolutely done with that. There are ways you could do business without that. Now, you're going to have to work a little bit harder and you're going to have to work a little bit smarter, but it can be done. It can be done. And there are many examples where it has been done. It's very interesting. I saw this video and I must have scrolled too fast. Hopefully I bookmarked it, but it was a video where it talked about how black men, this was back like during the Jim Crow days, there were many cases of black men who just bought their houses in cash. Like if they needed a car, they would just buy it in cash. If they needed if they wanted to build a house, they'll put their cash together and that's it. And they did everything in cash because the banking system at that time, they weren't steady. They wouldn't care about no black folks. They didn't want to serve black folks. So black folks said, okay, let's put our money to the side. Let's put our cash under the tree, under our bed or whatever. And that's how we going to flow. So they didn't deal with the debt. Black folks weren't dealing with debt or anything like that. We had the money. We had the wealth. My grandfather, he built his own house. He built, him and his brother, or my great uncle, I guess that would my great uncle. I guess that would be my great uncle. They built their home, right? And they also built another home too. They used to build their own homes. Now they didn't have any kind of background in building structures and all that stuff. And it's funny when you go through the house today, you can still see some of the things. Like if someone's a building contractor, they can look at, oh, this is uneven and that or whatever. But honey, listen, that thing stood for how many decades and how many children were raised? See things, and then you got, and this is another form of wealth of knowledge, things getting passed down from generation to generation, where there's just a knowing that you have where I don't need a bank. I don't need to go to these people here to build my stuff. The wealth of knowledge is right here in the house, and we can start building on that. That's another form of wealth that we can talk about. It ain't just money. It's a wealth of knowledge, documenting yourself. For those of you who are listening to me right now, if you're older, you need to start documenting your thoughts, your ideas. If you have children, if you got nephews and nieces, you need to start writing your stuff down, because guess what? One day you are going to die and they're going to need to know how did they get through it? But if you're dead in the grave and you didn't document anything, then how in the only option they're going to have is to go to the Jewish-controlled ChatGPT to learn how to do stuff. Yeah, I don't want to go off on a tangent on too many things because I'm trying to keep this conversation focused. I'm pretty much done here. But ChatGPT, I know one thing about AI systems is that they're always changing. They're always adjusting and changing. So ChatGPT has been getting very snippy with me lately. I told you I always argue with ChatGPT on stuff. Because, and where I typically argue on is when it's trying to, how can I say, I'm asking a very specific question, but you feel like you got to educate me on all this other stuff. And I'm like, no, this is what I'm asking. I'm not demanding you answer the way I answer in the sense of give me the answer I want to hear. I said, well, I've already made that very clear. I want the truth. I want the facts, but don't go this extra mile with this other stuff that I didn't ask for. You know what I mean? Because now you're going off. So they're always tweaking stuff. But what I'm saying is these systems, if we're going to rely on these AI systems, we're in a whole heap of trouble. I much rather rely on my grandfather and my grandmother and my aunts and uncles and the information they have so that it could get passed down. I need to be teaching my son about electronics. I have a background in electronics, building circuits and stuff like that. I can look at stuff, a lot of stuff. And I understand the basics on how it works. They should know that. I got to pass that down. You understand what I'm saying? Some of you have automotive skills that you didn't pass down to your children. Some of your children don't even know how to change a tire. We got to start passing down the wealth of knowledge that we have to our children. You understand what I'm saying? That's how it works. So it's not just money, it's all the other stuff. But anyway, that's pretty much it. I covered the reparations argument. I covered, the whole thing as far as like the sports and all of that. And that, yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity, but it's not a guarantee. And unfortunately, the numbers show that many of these athletes do not turn this into generational wealth because they don't have the skill set to do so, So anyway, let me take a look through your comments here. Unfortunately, I'm not able to repost them on the screen, but I'm just going to scroll here a little. Just give me just a moment and see very quickly here. If you give me just a moment, make sure I'm just going to go back here. CTO Drum says, I don't think people understand how generational wealth works. How many family members today are still living off an entertainment sports contract? For real. And let's see here. Calculated Crescendo, she said, that's what cash flow, money working for you versus cash savings, you exchanging hours for dollars will do. Exactly right. Exactly right. Hold on. Oh, man, what's this thing doing? Hold on. I'm still here. It wasn't scrolling for me here on this end here. I may have to. What's going on? Okay, here we go. Here we go. I have to kind of get down here a little bit and look. Okay, someone said South Park made a point about this, specifically basketball college drafts as modern slavery ages ago. Good episode, very true too. I have to look that up. I gotta look that one up. Let me look at this one here. Another one that says approaching it as an I play the game, I made money playing the game, I want to buy a team doesn't work. These guys buying teams aren't athletes. They're looks like tech gurus of investment firms, CEOs, big think. Right, they're not. These guys don't even probably even know how to catch a ball, but they understand how business works. Anyway, and then there's some other comments. Let me see if I missed anybody here. Hold on, let's see live chat. Let me see. Someone I missed. Make sure, because like I said, I invited the dude to come on if he wanted to chat about it. But that's really the gist of what I wanted to communicate in this broadcast here, and just understanding what wealth really is. Again, so to recap, these athletes, they're going to always stay on the field. I mean, if we're going to just be cheering on the fact that, oh, my baby's on the field or whatever, okay, then you're just another employee. At the end of the day, you're an employee, and if you get hurt or injured, then you're out of work, which means you're not making money. You understand what I'm saying? That's how that sports world works. You do have a few exceptions out there of people who do get in the athletic world, and they do surround themselves with people who are knowledgeable that they can trust and all of that. But in most of the cases, that is not the case. It's just what happens. Same thing in the entertainment industry. We could talk about that. Do you know how many entertainers you sit back and you think that, oh, man, they got so much money. They got so much. A lot of these entertainers are living concert to concert. I think we would all be collectively shocked. I mean, some of the stories I've heard, I was shocked. But from what I'm being told over and over again is this, Dwayne, that's just the tip of the iceberg. What these a lot of these artists, what happens is when you see these big time concerts and they're doing these tours and all of that, and it's real beautiful and all of that, that's the record companies, the record labels fronting them the money and saying, here, we're going to give you whatever millions of dollars to put on the best tour. And you, whatever you got to do, however you spend it or whatever, but make sure, you meet the standard or whatever that we set. So they put on the tour and all that. By the time the tour is over, you got to pay the sound people, the lighting people, all of that. By the time you pay a lot of these singers and stuff, they end up with nothing. Why do you think so many of these entertainers are going into what is it called, OnlyFans? Yeah, you got, and actors and actresses are going into things like OnlyFans and doing some of this other stuff. Why do you think they're doing that? They're doing that because they're not really making any money. They're slaves. They're slaves too. We just live in a world of imagination and makes us believe that they just have a little bit more. But, prison can also look very beautiful too. But you see how you'll be reminded very quickly that you're still in a prison when you try to overthrow the system that you're in. And once you try to do that, baby, forget about it. You out of here. You understand? But what I want to leave you with is this, is that as a black person, you always, as long as you are a human being, regardless, and this applies to anybody, you always are going to have options. This is probably the most powerful thing, if anything, that I want to leave. You always have options. You always have options. You just have to take the time, take some deep breaths, relax, park yourself a little bit, and allow your brain to figure out a way, because there's always a way. There's always a way for you to build your wealth, to build whatever it is. That there's always a way. It takes time. It takes time. And trust me, this is a lesson even I'm learning. Okay? But don't limit yourself to just this system. America, the system here in America, it may give you more opportunities, but I'm telling you right now, there is a glass ceiling here, and particularly for people like us, you know, the system is rigged. It is. So, but there's a way you can play the system long enough to get your stuff together, and then you can move on somewhere else where you can grow even more. That's it. So anyway, I'll be talking more about that in the future and all of that. But anyway, let me you know, I always like hearing from Coach here. Hold on. He said, I'm trying to scroll here. Some of those entertainers pay to play a tour. Live Nation has been in a lawsuit which with accusations that it acts like a monopoly with the concert ticket sales. Yep. I took my child to a financial literacy event here in town yesterday on how to, hold on for a second, man. It's not showing me. I'm trying to get to you. It's there. Unfortunately, I can't see it on my screen. It's not playing ball with me here, but y'all can read what he said there. So always good hearing from him. This is a brother here. He's building his own stuff. So anyway, that's it. That's all I have for you guys. As always, I really appreciate you guys being here. And, you know, I was hoping the guy, if he wanted to join me in this conversation, he would be here. Whatever. It's fine. You know, it happens a lot. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of lay this out so that we can really understand what we're really dealing with here. Okay. And that's it. So I'm not going to keep on running my mouth here. But anyway, I'm going to leave off with this song. If you didn't catch me at the beginning, this is a song, again, that I don't know. I know my son had something to do with it. I have to get with him and find out, did he write the words? That I don't know. But I'm going to leave off with that. Make sure you guys, again, check out our website, sambatree.com. There's a lot going on there. There's going to be more going on this week, so make sure you check it out, sambatree.com. Here's that song.
Chocolate girl. Chocolate girl. Chocolate girl. Yeah. She melts in the sun, sweet on my tongue. Every step she takes, a rhythm begun. Yeah. She's cocoa, she's velvet, she's all I need. A sugar rush walking, a living dream indeed. Her laughter smooth like caramel streams. She's the spark, she's the cream in my dreams. Candy shop girl.
I think I might have to put this on the community page, y'all. I'll make it a free download. Woo! There you go. Well, thanks again for joining me on this broadcast. You guys, as always, leave your comments down there. I'm going to be curious to hear what you have to say, your thoughts on this topic and anything else. Okay, you guys take care.